welcome back to the channel. My name is Charlie, or Elle, if you want to call me that. I'm the host of the Mage System, and I actually haven't filmed a video in a month because all of the videos for June were pre-filmed, so it's actually been a while. And I feel pretty good, I think. So there's that. But I wanted to talk today about Tulpamancy, which if you don't know what that is, which I'm going to call the video Having DID Without Trauma, but what we're essentially talking about is a subsection of people who are multiples or whatever, who basically essentially handcrafted and created the people in their brain. We're going to be discussing if it's real or not or whatever, but first of all, I want to preface this and say that I would like to make a sit-down research video on this, but this right now is kind of a pretty not very educated rant, or not rant, that makes it sound angry, or just waffle, I guess, about from what I know so far about it and comparing it to DID, which I have DID. And also, for what it's worth, I am a very woo-woo spiritual kind of person, I guess, which I wasn't always. I grew up in a family of atheists, so it's taken me a bit to get to that level. And it is of my understanding that Tulpamancy isn't exactly necessarily at all a spiritual thing. But with that being said, I am aware that the human brain is capable of some pretty incredible shit that you don't have to have trauma to have. But with that, I also have DID, and I want to talk about this the best way I can. With my experience, and with my experience with Tulpamancy-esque things. So if you don't know what it is essentially the practice that some people have found where if you practice hard enough and you are able to hone your brain skills well enough, you can implant a person in your head that can talk to you just like an altar does back and forth, and you can't predict what they're going to say, and you can have a good old back and forth conversation, and they have their own personality, and they say their own things, and they have their own wants and needs, just like an altar. And if you get good enough at it, you can even, supposedly, get this sort of little Tulpamancy person to inhabit your body and take control of it. Now, sorry, there's a plane flying overhead. I'm sorry if you can hear that. As I was saying, or not, that distracted the hell out of me. Granted, with being able to do all this with Tulpamancy, you're also supposed to be able to completely control it. This person cannot inhabit your body against your will. That's not really how it works. Like with DID, where that is kind of how it works, at least some of the time. And yeah, so they call themselves oftentimes systems or endogenic systems. I don't really know exactly, but there's traumagenic systems, which is the majority of people all people with DID really, who acquired it through copious amounts of trauma. And then there's these people who have Tulpamancy, which I want to say claim to have Tulpamancy, but then I feel like I'm being a jerk. People who claim to do this. Listen, here's the thing. I have grappled with a lot of philosophical concepts in my life, and if you want me to really be honest here, I don't think it's really that insane you perceive it, therefore it is. And if there is somebody in your head talking to you and you can't predict what they're going to say, then there's somebody in your head talking to you and you can't predict what you're going to say. At the end of the day, you're the only person who's going to know. And if you perceive it that way, then it is. If a tree falls in the middle of the woods and nobody's around to hear it, did it even happen? So, you know what I mean? It's Schrodinger's little person in your head. So, but with that being said, do these people have DID? No. No, they don't. Okay? They just don't. See, with DID, number one, there has to be amnesia that is there, that is inconsistent with just ordinary forgetting. And this doesn't necessarily mean blackouts between switches all the time, but it could be blackouts of traumatic events, important life events, certain periods of your life and stuff like that. But nevertheless, there needs to be blackouts or, amnesia in order to have DID. Which, you can have those things and have tulpamancy, but it's not consistent because it's not caused by the trauma that's causing your tulpamancy, you know what I mean? So, for number one, that's not it. I mean, I think part of the definition of DID is the fact that you have to have trauma. Sorry, I'm just letting my dog out and then I just didn't even say anything about it. That's one thing I love about making videos is that I don't edit them ever, so it's gonna be, they're just a little wild. Sorry. But anyways, you don't have amnesia. And also, in the criteria for DID, it says it cannot be caused by cultural or religious practices. Now, tulpamancy isn't necessarily a religious practice, but I think it's a cultural practice. I mean, I think it is. I think it's it's something you decided to do. I don't know. So it's not a mental disorder. It doesn't cause you clinically significant distress. You chose to do it. It's not DID. That being said, go ahead and call yourself multiple if you want, plural even. Go off, sure, but you don't have DID. And I don't want to gatekeep you in the community just because you don't experience the terrible symptoms that come with DID, the lack of control, the trauma aspects of it. But at the same time, I also can definitely empathize with the fact that you just, it's so hard because I see everything from everyone's perspective to some degree. We're going to move on from this topic and jump over to whether it's real or not and just touch on that again. Sorry, this is super all over the place. I think that there's a very real possibility that tulpamancy is possible. And the reason why is that I think, well, number one, sorry, very all over the place, like I said. People in the tulpamancy community, I've read through the FAQs and stuff, and they say it's a lot easier for people who have written characters in the past to create tulpas and stuff and are very imaginative people, which would point to the fact that these aren't real people, they are just you creating a character in your head. But what I say to that is, yeah, so what? Your subconscious constructed a character and it's in your head, which is kind of the same thing that DID is, your subconscious did make a person and now they're in your head. But at the same time, no. Here's the thing. The question, is tulpamancy made out of the same material that DID is? Are alters, regardless of how they're caused, regardless if you put them in your head or they're caused by childhood trauma, is tulpamancy people the same kind of thing that DID people are? Meaning, is the experience consistent? Are they the same thing, just caused differently? I highly doubt it. Gotta let my dog in. Come on. Sorry. I highly doubt it because, well, like I said, you perceive, therefore you are. But also at the same time, I am a firm believer in the theory of structural dissociation when it comes to DID, which means that the original alters you have were ego states that you can only have whenever you're a child before you have developed DID. And so I think that it is likely neurologically impossible for tulpamancy personalities to be the same thing as DID personalities. I just don't think it's possible. But jumping around back to if it's real or not, I mean, I don't talk about it a lot on this channel because it's embarrassing to me. I still have shame around it or guilt or whatever, but I work with like a few like deities and spiritual stuff or whatever. And as I've worked with them over the years, over time, there will be times where I can kind of hear them in my head talking to me, or I can feel their presence. It's not an altar. And granted, somebody could make the argument that my brain created some sort of semi-altar because I already have DID and I already have the capability of doing that, but I kind of doubt it. I think if you have a very clear and concise relationship with a certain energy, it can ebb and flow inside your brain, and you can teach the subconscious to construct it in words. I think that is possible. All I'm saying is I think tulpamancy is probably possible. But I'm also saying that it's not the same thing as DID. Now, I guess the only question left to answer that I've jumbled through and it's half touched on all the questions, and then I'm going back and finishing up. This is so all over the place, but I don't know. I guess I don't really care. I think at this point my channel is just me sitting and talking about whatever I want, and then if you are okay with me rambling, then this can just be like you and I having a conversation. The only question left to answer is, do these people have a place in the DID community? The first question I have to that right off the bat is, do you need one? I need a place in the DID community because I freaking felt crazy, alone, and my experience was not like anybody else's on the planet. Particularly made distressing by the trauma aspects of it, the fact that I had no control, the fact that these parts were traumagenic and they carried very dark and scary characteristics often and things that I didn't understand, and the PTSD stuff. That is why I needed a community, because otherwise I would, I probably wouldn't be alive. But if you have tulpamancy, you know exactly what you're doing from the beginning, and also you have control over this whole thing. And so, why do you need to be in the community? Do you just want to? Why? Why the DID community? I mean, there's a tulpamancy community. That seems like it would be more fitting for you. You'd fit in better. You'd have a funner time over there. Sometimes the DID community can be kind of a bummer. Why the DID community? I'm kind of genuinely curious. If anybody here's got tulpas or whatever, let me know. I'm curious. But I wanted to make this video with a neutral perspective, I guess, because people tend to be quite fatalistic about this, as if you have DID and it's caused by trauma, rightfully so. I understand your emotions. You'll be like, this shit is so dumb, it's literally not real, and you cannot insert yourself into a community. You did not go through the trauma to be here and to be calling yourself multiple. I understand that. That's all I have to say. I understand. But yeah, why do you want to be in the DID community if you do? Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I might make a more structured video on this at some point, but tulpamancy, I think it's pretty freaking interesting. I mean, I'm a slut for conversations like this. Come on, man, I could talk about this for so long. But yeah, anyways, I should go now. I'll see you later. Bye.